Before the iconic, brash, outspoken Teflon Don, John Gotti, there was the originator, one Alphonse Capone, the king of Chicago, who ruled with an iron fist. Through Prohibition and the Great Depression, Capone would gain folk hero status, a man hated by the government and local authorities, but loved by the people. Capone was notoriously brutal for anyone who dared challenge his authority, but the people saw the gentler side of the Don. Capone saw a threat that was greater than Prohibition and greater than the Great Depression: Bolshevism. Capone watched as the Bolsheviks won the bloody Russian Civil War. Capone watched the seizure of power by Joseph Stalin. Capone, brash and outspoken, began letting his concerns be heard. On August 27, 1931, Al Capone would do an interview with Cornelius Vanderbilt Jr. at the Lexington Hotel. In this interview, Capone would say, "The Democrats will be swept in a record vote. The masses will think they'll get a relief from the Depression that way. I know very little about world finance, but I don't think the end of the Depression will come like that. I think it will take longer, a series of circumstances that will bring about a relief, if we don't let the Reds try to bring it out before. Roosevelt's a good fellow, but I'm afraid his health is pretty shaky, and a leader needs health." Al Capone would nail the election predictions. FDR would win in one of the most one-sided elections in American history, and even bigger in the following 1936 election. Continuing in the interview, Capone expresses his belief that he would need to take it upon himself, believing they couldn't wait on the government to provide relief and assistance. "This is going to be a terrible winter. Us fellas got to open our pocketbooks and keep on keeping them open if we want any of us to survive. We can't wait for Congress or Hoover or anyone else. We must help keep tummies filled and bodies warm. If we don't, it's all up with the way we've learned to live. Why, don't you know, sir, America is on the verge of the greatest social upheaval? Bolshevism is knocking at our gates. We can't afford to let it in. We've got to organize ourselves against it and put our shoulders together and hold fast. We need funds to fight the famine." Capone's words weren't hollow. He would follow through on his words, and as he said, he kept his pocketbook open. He would open soup kitchens for the people of Chicago where the government fell short, as he predicted. Capone's soup kitchens would be fully stocked every day with soup, hundreds of loaves of bread, over 1,000 rolls, 50 pounds of sugar, 30 pounds of coffee and donuts, feeding an average of 2,200 people a day, 3 times a day, and on holidays. Nobody was turned down, and they did not require proof that they needed food. Everyone was allowed in, and even allowed seconds. At the cost of around $300 a day, the equivalent to nearly $6,000 today, this would be one of the first kitchens of its kind, located at 935 South State Street.
Chicago's most notorious citizen, Al Capone, king of the gangsters, appears in a new role, that of public benefactor, when he sets up soup kitchens to feed unemployed and the suffering of his fellow men. So he came out in this new role of public benefactor. It costs Al $2,500 per week to feed these men. First real meal in days, thanks to Mr. Capone's hospitality.
Best soup I had in 5 weeks. Fine.
I've been walking all around town. I've been seeing a good many places that give the poorest soup I ever got. But this is the finest soup I ever tasted in my life, and give my regards to this place.
President of the future. The poor and unfortunates like myself on State Street. They're begging for a bowl of soup and for a sandwich. We haven't got no work. We can't get no work. We're looking for work. We can't get no work, but we will, why, someday in the future. Now, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, when we go to work and get this here work, we'll go wide to work. If it wasn't for our friend Al Capone roping open this here White House on 935 South State Street, we wouldn't eat.
I appreciate the soup. On a Sunday and a cold day, soup is very hot. For these poor men here, I enjoy it myself. Sure, all these poor guys there are just naturally hungry and starving now. Look what Capone's doing for these poor guys. He's doing all this himself. To put up with their place, all these soup places like this. Big soup. That got good soup in here anytime, you always got loads of thousands of people coming in here.
This is the Department of Public Welfare dining room, feeding 1,300 persons each night. Over 300,000 have been fed since the first of the year. It is a real haven of refuge for the unemployed, and they sure are enjoying it. The unemployed lined up for registration before getting a bath and bed for the night.
What's your name? My name is George Tisker.
It's unknown if Capone was ever at the soup kitchens himself. Some stories say he was, but there was no photo showing him there. By that time, Capone was already labeled public enemy number 1. It's possible he wouldn't show up for that reason. Capone would close this interview with one final warning. We must keep America whole and safe and unspoiled. If machines are going to take the jobs away from the worker, then he will need to find something else to do. Perhaps he'll get back to the soil, but we must care for him during this period of change. We must keep him away from red literature, red ruses. We must see that his mind remains healthy, for, regardless where he was born, he is now an American. In relation to this, Capone would be asked about fascism as well. Capone would seemingly give a nod to Mussolini's fascism, saying, "It's a swell racket if you can keep the boys in line."